Hi everyone, my name is Clare Lemlick. I'm a member of Marx21, your sister organization in the United States, and I'm speaking to you from Los Angeles, California. So first I will say I feel joyful to be living my first year free of Donald Trump for many reasons, but especially for his sexism. During his 2016 campaign and really throughout his whole presidency, it felt like every other day there was another revelation that Trump had assaulted or abused or mistreated another woman. And the fact that he could win the highest office in the country when everyone knew he was a serial sexual abuser, it exposed for many of us, things that many of us already knew. The system protects and rewards abusers, and it punishes and isolates survivors. And as awful as it was, Trump's obvious sexism did help you really ignite a new women's movement that lasted through the whole presidency, starting with the women's marches during his inauguration, which were the largest ever one-day protest in US history. After that came the Me Too movement, #MeToo, which was sparked especially in Hollywood and the entertainment industry, but it also started a national conversation about sexual violence and harassment in the workplace. McDonald's workers in Chicago went on a Me Too strike against workplace harassment, which was short-lived, but it was important, especially in a sector that's so dominated by women in poverty, and by women of color in particular. And at the same time, Google tech workers all over the world also held short workplace walkouts about sexism in their workplaces. So the movement had spread in a really encouraging way at that time. But that same year, Trump nominated Brett Kavanaugh to join the highest court in the country, the Supreme Court, for a lifetime term. And this was after very credible accusations that he attempted to rape someone at a party when he was a teenager. And it's not only upsetting that a rapist is on the court, but he'll be able to oversee things like abortion restrictions across the country for many years to come. And it makes me wonder, if he was prepared to hurt one woman so badly at a party, what might he do with all of that power on the court to all of our bodies and our bodily autonomy while he has that power? Trump managed to get another right-wing judge elected to the court just before he slithered out of the White House and off to his golf course. So we're, of course, very concerned here about attacks on our right to choose in the coming months and years. For me, and I think for all socialists, the wave of teachers' strikes in 2019 to 2018-19 gave me the greatest sense of hope that we could beat back the sexist attacks in our society. And these strikes started in some of the most conservative areas of the country, some of them without formal unions at all, and it spread like wildfire, and many of these strikes won. And these struggles were often led by women, especially women of color. So where I live in Los Angeles, the teachers struck not only for immediate issues like pay rises and class sizes and staffing, but also they demanded a fund to protect immigrant students, to end the racist policing in schools, and all kinds of other anti-oppression demands. And the whole city really supported the strikers. You could feel it everywhere. The solidarity was enormous. And we actually raised over $50,000 to send tacos and other supplies, food supplies, to the strike during that time. And now the union is leading the fight against unsafe school reopenings in Los Angeles now. So the struggle definitely still goes on in those places. I started by saying that I feel joyful to live free of Trump, but unfortunately that joy is small and quick because during last year's election, we didn't actually get rid of an abuser president. We just replaced a Republican sexual abuser with a Democrat, Joe Biden. So during the presidential nominations, and on top of several other accusations about inappropriate touching, a credible sexual abuse story came out from one of Biden's former aides, Tara Reade. And this is when the Me Too movement went from being an inspiring example of holding powerful abusers accountable to being, a movement in crisis and collapse. So the liberal establishment had worked to co-opt and defang the anti-sexist movements under Trump from the start. They tried to make the original women's marches all about Hillary Clinton rather than about Trump sexism or about structural sexism. And by 2020, actually, the women's marches were basically just get out the vote events for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, with the obvious talking point that Kamala Harris would be the first woman vice president. And like the Democratic Party usually does, it expected the movement to shut up about Biden's abuse, and most mainstream and progressive organizations did exactly that, while they threw all of their resources into getting Biden elected last year. So basically, the Democrats had sacrificed Biden's sexual violence victims in order to get rid of Trump. And I think that we're right to be relieved that Trump is gone, but it's really necessary that the movement for women's liberation will need to rise again under Biden and Harris, using mass marches, strikes, and all the strategies that we were developing under Trump. Abortion, contraception access, equal pay, the right to live without harassment and abuse, they're not going to go away because Biden is in the White House. In fact, his presence there reinforces sexism. Already, we're seeing the new ways that sexism is operating now, with women losing so much work and taking on so much of the burden of schooling at home during the COVID lockdowns. And the conditions that, sparked the Me Too movement and all the other movements against sexism are still very present and still very real. And it will take a fight against the entire capitalist system, which breeds oppression and inequality, to get rid of sexual and gender oppression for good. So I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your discussion, and I look forward to meeting in person one day very soon. All of the struggles we face as women, as working people, as people who are now facing the medical and economic crisis brought on by COVID-19, all of these struggles are international, which means our fight back has to be international too. So thank you for having me today. Solidarity, comrades.
Güncel siyaset, kültür, işçi, kadın, çevre, göçmen ve LGBT artı haberleri ve Marksist teori için Marksist.org'u takip edin.